Let's start this hour with one of the scientists who's researched the potential wider health benefits of weight loss injections. It's now believed semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy, could treat multiple conditions linked to inflammation. Dr. Mikhail Kosiborod is a cardiologist at St. Luke's Mid-America Heart Institute. He's currently in London, where he presented his research yesterday, and he joins us now. Dr. Kosiborod, welcome to the programme.
Good morning. Great to be with you.
It's very good to speak to you. So, I mean, this sounds exciting, I think, on the face of it. Talk to us about the benefits that have been identified from the use of Ozempic.
Well, I'm a cardiologist, and what we have, the conference we have going on in London is the European Static Cardiology Conference. So most of the research being presented here has to do with the effect of the medication on cardiovascular disease. And what we know is that while, of course, we talk about semaglutide, the active ingredient in Ozempic and Wegovy as the medications that can promote weight loss, and was known for a while that it can treat type 2 diabetes. What we've discovered over the past couple of years is that it can have pretty substantial benefits for people with various forms of cardiovascular disease. We learned last year is that it can improve symptoms and physical limitations that people experience due to a common type of heart failure. We also learned that it can substantially reduce the risk of heart attacks and strokes in people who are at risk for it and also have overweight or obesity. We also learned earlier this year that it can substantially reduce the risk of kidney disease progression. And as you mentioned, there is a substantial amount of additional research that was actually presented yesterday at this conference here as well, giving us some additional insights.
Are all of these benefits offshoots, if you like, of weight loss? Is weight loss at the core of this, or are these benefits kind of in addition to losing weight?
No, what we've learned, and I think there is mounting evidence to further support that, is that weight loss may be a component for some of the benefits that we are seeing, but it certainly does not explain everything. And some of these benefits appear to be at least partially weight loss independent.
That's really interesting. So there's a couple of different tracks here. So when we talk about what's been presented at the conference that you're attending, there have been multiple papers, I think 10 in fact. So what were you specifically looking at?
So we did a number of studies. We actually presented and published 4 studies out of the 10 that you mentioned yesterday. And the range of studies that we predominantly focused on had to do with heart failure. And we showed at this conference last year and in subsequent studies over the course of the last year is that semaglutide, again, the active ingredient in Ozempic and Wegovy, appears to be one of the most effective interventions to reduce symptoms and physical limitations in people who have a common type of heart failure. And of course, heart failure in many ways is defined by those symptoms and physical limitations like shortness of breath, fatigue, and things like that. And what we showed yesterday is that in addition to those benefits in people with heart failure, semaglutide also appears to reduce the risk of serious complications of heart failure in addition to that. So things like being hospitalized for heart failure, having to go to an emergency department for worsening heart failure, and things like that. And the reduction in those events was quite significant, was about 41%, which is a very large potential treatment effect here. And there were a number of additional studies that looked at various other effects, including effects on inflammation and so on.
There's so much I want to ask you. So I want to start here. Should people be encouraged by this, and therefore should people start using Ozempic? Who is this for? If it is preventative in this way, is there anyone this is not for?
Well, I think the medication should be used according to what it's approved for by regulatory authorities in various countries. And so I think that should guide the decision making. And clinicians, of course, are have the freedom to use the medication how they see fit. But that I think is a good guide. So, like for example, in the United States, where I practice, it's now approved for both management of type 2 diabetes and for weight management, but it also has an indication to reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease as well.
Mm.
And I think when it comes to conditions like heart failure, there is mounting data that could be helpful there as well. But of course, it's up to the regulatory authorities to make decisions about these types of things using the data that we produce.
Are we talking enough about potential harms of Ozempic? Have we identified harms?
Well, we know that these medications, like semaglutide and others similar to that, can cause gastrointestinal effects like nausea. That's reasonably common. In most people, it occurs relatively early after starting the medication and tends to get better over time. But like most medications, not for everyone, and some patients can't tolerate it.
Mm. And just finally, should this be available on the NHS more readily and for a wider range of things than simply sort of diabetes and direct weight loss considerations, which is definitely how Ozempic is being used right now? Should this be more widely available on the National Health Service in the UK?
Well, I think it's for the National Health Service to decide. I'm
Yeah.
not a Brit, and I'm an American, so I'm not going to make comments about what NHS should do. What I will say is, what we've learned certainly is that this is not a medication that's dealing with just weight-related issues.
Yeah.
I think what's critical to understand here is that obesity is a chronic disease. It's causing a range of substantial complications that we are dealing with as a society, and certainly in high-risk patients that already have heart-related to kidney-related complications, things like blockages in heart arteries or heart failure. It appears to have significant potential benefits here.
Yeah.
So in the United States, we just recently had a decision by Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services to cover the medication for retirees that has a combination of obesity and heart disease, for example. So I think each country has to decide for its own, but the data is really mounting that it's about a lot more than weight loss.
It's so fascinating speaking to you. Thank you very much indeed. Thanks for your time.
My
Uh,
pleasure. Good to be with you.
Thank you. That's Dr. Mikhail Kose-Borod, cardiologist at St. Luke's Mid-America Heart Institute.